friends, welcome to episode 209 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
Oh, I'm full from dinner and it was lovely.
Belly full of tacos, best way to start an evening.
Yeah. For those who are probably listening to us later this week, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
And for those of you tonight, pre-gaming. Good job.
Happy birthday to your wife, Vicky.
Yes. Her birthday is this week. I'm sad to say that we don't have major things planned for her, but later this month she's going on a cruise, so we'll accept that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you still got a bunch of friends coming over.
Yeah, we'll do some socializing this weekend and see some people, so that'll be nice, and it'll be more of a, quiet, casual event rather than something, big and, ostentatious. We'll be saving that for a few birthdays on. She's got some plans apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
So she's excited about the future. But yeah, that's it on my side of the coin.
Personal gaming has been a little quiet. Sean's still kind of ramping up to his. His is in 2 weeks.
We had some great discussions though over the weekend with the different players because he was just like, okay, these two players have pretty much made mechanically the same characters. What makes you different?
Right. Well, so not only that, he wanted to get you two together to kind of talk like, okay, so what, just make sure you're not playing the same character. We're going to nip any complications with that in the bud here. But also like, on my side of things, just, living with him and talking to him day to day, he really took a lot of our discussion about proactive and reactive gaming to heart.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
He really enjoyed what Jonah and Tristan Fischel had to say. He's looking forward to the book coming out. He's like, this is my wheelhouse.
Yep.
And he's like, I've heard him like directly quoting, things that we were talked about
that's
in
awesome.
there to really kind of like gear up for things.
Yeah.
In that, he asked all of us for a little snippet of background. He asked us for a major character goal and asked us for one NPC that we know and have as a contact. You know.
Yep.
So getting those sort of things prepared so he can all kind of integrate us into the story and hit the ground running. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see where it goes and to work with Sean and kind of feel out the game. But I think there'll be a lot of good storytelling between the group. There's a lot of good friend chemistry already, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yep.
Absolutely. But other than that, I don't think we have Mouse Guard got scheduled in June.
Yeah, it got pushed out a little bit
because May is just a rough month for everybody.
There's just a lot going on, and it didn't pan out well with the groups. So,
and our friend's daughter is going to the Robot War finals.
Already did.
Yeah,
made it to within the Texas finals. Made it into the semifinal finishes for her division and got knocked out in the first round. Sadly.
Darn to hear.
But like a little group out of Michigan here who had almost no funding and literally started their robot design on paper. Didn't even start it in AutoCAD or anything like that. Did an amazing job. Got tons of awards. I think they ended up with 4 banners before they were done with this run.
Yeah.
And they were going up against people who had NASA as a sponsor. Or Amway as a sponsor.
Yeah, if you can't execute,
Well, and multi-hundred, I wouldn't say 100, but teams that would take 10 minutes to go through their woohoo lines, and they're yeah, we're already done. This is our 20 that we were able to bring here, that we bust in. We didn't have our private jet fly us down, kind of a thing. But I'm very proud of them. I was there at the inception of US First and got to see how it progressed, and so I was excited seeing it after all of these years so big. And all the little precepts that we had set up and did at the very beginning are still there. It's still very community. It's still very much about keeping the kids involved. It's not like Pinewood Derby where it's really dads who build the cars and kids who get to play with them later. This is 100% kids doing crazy crap. And now it's middle schoolers are getting it with Legos to start with. So by the time they get to high school, they're we're done with the Legos. Give me metal. I want sheet metal.
Right.
I want actual motors. Give me some stuff to work with.
Well, we know who to call when ChatGPT starts building hunter-killer drones to get rid of us all.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much. So, but yeah. God, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, the ChatGPT conversation is moving very quickly.
I feel like there's something to be said about it, but I think it's too early to say things about it right now.
Yeah.
Because I do think that there is going to be some interesting movement with that in things like MMOs and dynamic games, kind of like Division, where you could have emergent story based upon your actions.
Yeah, I could see it.
And that would be cool. I would respect like NPCs to have better conversations with me based upon my actions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not just a, hey, good job. You know, it's like, dude, thank you so much for taking care of getting our electric set up. You know, we knew those guys, you know, down on 7th were going to give you hell, but man, the Reapers really, you gave them, you know, what, and like, you did all of that.
Right,
you know,
right.
those kinds of things. Or like in Division, like you help people in the street at times.
Mm-hmm.
To have that come back at you later would be great.
I would say I'm fine with it as far as the back end decision making process for the NPCs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I still want to make sure that actual voice actors are getting paid for their work. You know?
No, 100%. Like,
and that's really the big
scripting.
contention right now. Is not it's not about the back end stuff. It's about which humans are you replacing in the thing.
Like
there's a writer's strike right now, and that's one of the big.
I 100% stand behind the writer's strike.
There's one big problem with the writer's strike. Right now is that they're trying to negotiate is like. You know, we want stipulations moving forward that you can't use AI to replace us, essentially.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree with that. I don't mind it for emergent things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would really help for a lot of the emergent things and help make those games that basically need an extended life for the things that sit around in the background and follow the player around would help a lot. Likewise, I feel things like, and as much as I agree that Midjourney is a stopgap for some tool set for artists to use.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that something like Midjourney is a good tool set for emergent character design. Like, imagine if you got into your MMO and you got, you know, after you made your character, you picked your background, you've got your class, you know, maybe you even you hand type in your goals and things right into it. You then end up getting an emergent image of what your character looks like that comes out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just kind of like transition through it. I would love to see that. Like Baldur's Gate, you could pick art. And the art was great, don't get me wrong, but you, at a certain point, you just run out of images when you're dealing with, you know, MMOs with hundreds of thousands of players.
Sure.
You know, to millions of players. This would then give you that option to have an emergent character art get generated.
Yeah, I can see it. You know,
and even if you had artists build the catalog of what the world looks like and the types of characters that are in it, and then it uses that framework to build these emergent images, I think that's a beautiful way of handling that.
Yeah, it could work. I'm sure there's like you said, there's a bigger discussion,
way bigger,
but not for today.
Yeah.
You know,
today is totally different.
Today, believe it or not, actually is totally different.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah, one of the podcasts I listen to calls this the preamble ramble. we're gonna BS for 10 minutes before we actually get to the real topic.
Why not? We have a microphone, they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
all right. So tonight we actually are talking about a real topic.
We are. It's our 202.
Yeah, it's another 202. It's the first Wednesday of the month, so we're going to deep dive into a sort of niche topic that may not take up an entire, you know, it's not like a basic, it's not like a 101 sort of thing, but maybe it's a side branch of that. We're going to talk about multifaceted encounters tonight. And so it's kind of like an expansion of an encounter building.
Yeah. Sits within that bracket.
Yeah, this one's more about like making your encounters a little spicier, maybe a little cooler, a little more dynamic. So, first off, we'll start with the definition.
Yes.
What is a multifaceted encounter? All right, so typically, our encounters are typed, you know, this is truer with some games than it is with others. I know Savage Worlds usually breaks these very, very cleanly into, like, different types. But we can kind of broadly put our encounters into different buckets. You know, you've got a combat encounter, you've got a social encounter, you've got a chase encounter, you might have a stealth encounter, etc. You know, and that's basically just saying that the particular types of skills and action in the scene is going to follow that particular type of thing.
And to a degree, the reaction and action economy can be very different depending on what you're doing. Because a lot of times in a social, it's not going to have an initiative. It may have a back and forth.
Sure, yeah.
You know, in that sense of who, you know, and in some games, even the social is based upon who is carrying the weight of the conversation. You know, whether it's a matter of someone is leading and someone is following, you know, in a conversation. Whereas the same can be said about a chase, but there is an action economy in a chase based upon who's in the lead.
Yeah. And like games like Savage Worlds actually have like chase
mechanics,
rules, you know. Combat, usually we define a combat scene by, you know, okay, initiative has been rolled. This is now a combat scene, you know.
Yeah.
And so a multifaceted encounter is basically just taking encounters where two or more of these things are happening at the same time. Okay, so why would you blend these things?
Well, I mean, it's fun, but it's also natural. It's how action occurs. It's not like stealth is separated from combat or social is separated from, you know, from fencing, even to a degree.
Yeah, there's plenty of scenes like in media where you've got two people who are dueling with words as much as they are with swords.
And in some cases, the weight from one leans into the other. You know, a perfect one that a lot of people, like most people know, Princess Bride. The very end with Inigo Montoya and the Count, they're dueling with words as much as they are dueling with their swords about and carrying weight with each one of those things. Grosse Point Blank has a gun fight with Dan Aykroyd, and it's witty banter, but at the same time it carries into the conversation. You know, and we see this more so in Spy and other things like that, but it carries into those. You know, I've also seen a number of movies where chases, you know, will have other elements added into them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also can be individual characters doing different things.
Yeah.
And you want that to be involved, and mixing and giving that option that, like, a lore-based character who is a researcher helping out a strength fighting-based character and maybe a wizard all in the same encounter sounds kind of cool. You know, what does that look like?
But,
you know?
like, usually we're running a combat encounter, so the non-combat character just kind of has to take a back seat. And now we're in a research scene, and those combat characters take a back seat while the research dude does his thing. What if those weren't two different scenes? What if the researcher had to do his research under fire while the combat people were defending him?
Exactly.
That's the type of thing we're talking about.
Exactly.
So I kind of break blended encounters down into, or multifaceted encounters down into kind of three different types. This is by no means definitive. This is just kind of something I made off the top of my head here.
But I think it fits.
I think it fits. So generally you've got either A, PCs doing two things at once.
The ship is sailing and also sinking, like, because it's being shot at. So
well,
you're fighting.
I was thinking more like the aforementioned, like you said, that the researcher has to do his research in the middle of a combat scene.
Right.
You know, that's the two things at once. You've got a research scene and a combat scene all at once. You've got a chase scene, but at the same time, crossbow bolts are hitting the carriage, you know.
You've got combat that's happening while the chase is going on.
Exactly. Things like that. PC's doing one thing while another is happening.
The end of the Mummy, maybe? There's a battle coming at the same time as they're trying to stop the ritual.
I'm trying to... yes, but they're all involved in all of those things, so I think that's a PC's doing two things at once. I'm thinking more of a fighting while a Well, a massive earthquake is happening and the building is coming down around you.
Or a trap has been triggered and actions are occurring around you, and you have combat going on.
Yes, exactly. Things like that.
Or the guards are coming while you're doing the research.
Doing one thing while another thing is happening is more that the other thing that's happening is passive and not involving directly the players. It is an environmental factor that gets added on top of. It's one thing to have combat. It's another thing to have combat in a burning building.
That is a thing.
With beams falling down and,
There are consequences.
Exactly. And then the last thing is PCs all doing their own thing towards a common goal, otherwise known as ship combat, where, everybody mans a station and everybody kind of does their own individual thing, but it's all towards that sort of group unified goal.
Greater good.
The greater good. So we'll discuss PCs doing two things at once, which I think is probably the most key example of what we're trying to talk about here.
Then that's the Brendan Fraser mummy thing. You've got a researcher, you've got a fighter, you've got, maybe two researchers, depending on how you look at it, or a researcher/fighter. So you have one person who's, translating and trying to control the zombies so that the person fighting has less zombies and can focus on the big bad guy, while another person is also trying to help with the translation from another part of the room to stop the events of what are about to occur.
Exactly.
Stop the ritual.
There's a lot going on there. But every character in that in that scene is undoubtedly involved and effectively doing the thing that they're meant to do, You put another one on here, Three Musketeers, which I know is one of your favorite movies.
The Disney one. The chase sequence where, which is most notably known when Porthos pulls out wine and says, he suggests, the red. Oh, you're the white. Oh, right, the red. That's what I should have gone with. But you've got someone driving the carriage. You've got people switching reins, actually, while other people are firing pistols at those who are chasing against them and fighting them, and making decisions. Porthos at one point literally finds money and realizes that they're about to go through a small town area, and if he throws the money out to the people, they'll go after it and block the way.
Yep.
And all of these are decisions that are being made by different characters in different directions, but because the events are all happening at the same time.
Yes. One example from my game recently was when you guys all went to Apocrypha, this infinite library that is an entire realm to itself.
Yep.
And you were looking for a very specific unmarked book. Because all of the books there are unmarked.
Right.
And like I said, it's an infinite library, so it's literally a needle in an infinite-sized haystack you're looking for here. But you had a magical compass that pointed you towards where this book was.
Yes.
So you got there, and there was basically like a stack of books where it was like, it's in there somewhere. So you're like, okay, well, that narrows it down, but we still need to find which of these 50 books it is. As you begin to search, though, the local wildlife decides that it takes exception to use filtering through its books.
Right.
And so we had a blended encounter there. You guys had to accumulate a number of successes on research rolls.
Yes.
To reach a predetermined number. Now, that number needs to be high enough at this point that it presents a time crunch to get to it. But not so high as to drag the encounter on past when it's fun. Basically, the idea is to keep you there long enough you feel the sense of danger and urgency, but not so long that you're like, oh god, can we get on with this?
Right.
Each turn passes by, more and more powerful enemies show up. Okay, so we have an escalation, and that puts a little more pressure on the researchers trying to find this book, right? If you don't find it soon, more and more powerful enemies are showing up, and it's going to start getting tense. Maybe the researchers are going to have to jump in and fight instead. And most importantly, nobody has to do any task. I didn't walk in there and say, okay, you three have to make these rolls, and you three have to fight the monsters. I just said, okay, you will make research rolls to start looking for the book. Anybody who wants to do that can. And, oh yeah, here are your first monsters, and they're approaching. You can see them coming your way.
Yeah, and it did have that level of tension, but it also had, because of that tension, had that strong sense of victory, which was wonderful. So.
Yeah, and when the encounter was over, because you had this this danger component to it, the researchers got to do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
You had some people who had poured some significant character build, into getting a high research skill. So at this point, you've got them all kind of going like, oh yeah, this is what my character is built for.
This is my jam.
I am ready to roll this gigantic research skill that I have. At the same time, you've got this danger component, so it's not a scene where your researchers are sitting out while the combat's happening, or the combat's sitting out while the research is happening.
Right.
You've got both at the same time, and both are integral with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, one of the people who was doing the research saw you guys getting a little overwhelmed, saw something big show up, and whipped a fireball over his shoulder to help you guys for a turn.
Right. Forgave a chance to cut down the amount of time, but also recognize that the time element and pressure element meant there was a balance difference.
Exactly. So why is building an encounter like this interesting?
Well, I mean,
aside from the mechanics that went into it.
Well, I'll start with the very basics. If all we were doing was going there and just picking books off a shelf, and then something happened, the proverbial find. There clearly has to be a switch in this room. Everybody search the room until we find the switch. Okay, and then the switch is found and the door opens. It's kind of boring just to make rolls around a table until that happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels staged and blocked. And in this case, it also creates the image to the players that success is inevitable.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're blocking plot. Whereas with this, the answer is there before you. You've already presented the goal. It is in this space. Now, can you get to this goal? Can you find the jelly bean in the pit of baked beans? Before the timer runs out. And now we're playing one of the gotcha games.
Yeah, because essentially you could eventually find that book with a long enough time to do so. Time is the resource I'm taking away from you, though.
Yeah.
And likewise, combat encounters just by themselves tend to just kind of feel like boring time sinks and distractions, and a lot of times. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who really love combat. I mean, by all means, D&D has a very big following. But if you look online, you see a lot of discussion about how do I make combat more interesting? How do I make more combat less of a slog?
Yeah.
And I think that's a major concern across multiple game systems. I know I like to bag on D&D, but even Savage Worlds combat can drag a little bit,
Well, it doesn't feel like there's a consequential time element to it. We look at the excitement that something like John Wick presents when he walks in a room and clearly he now realizes that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 assassins in this civilian situation. How is he going to survive this? Well, the key to the excitement of that moment is why he's stopped in that. He is on his way through it to do something. He has a goal. He has to complete it because whatever is next, if he doesn't get to that point, is going to set him further back. And we know this as an audience, and he knows it as a character, and that's the cross point that you have to get across. And in normal combat encounters, it is you walk into a room or you're entered into a situation, you have X number of things to kill. But there's no pressure.
Yeah.
There's no inherent moment of tension that is being added to give you a stopgap of, other than hit points. And by that point, it's too late.
Yeah.
Now it's just fear. There's no tension. It's, oh gosh, our fighter went down. Our mage is almost down to no hit points and very few spells. We're at a resource loss. We need to leave.
Yeah.
And you're literally rounds from death at that point. It doesn't feel exciting. It just feels fearful and lossful. Whereas if you're we only have another 5 turns before the door gets broken down and 30 more guards pour in. Okay, we need to finish this and get what we need done. Now there's a sense of tension, And so in that, having that hostile environment, the fire like that you presented before, where you're literally fighting in a building that is burning, meaning it starts out small, but it is going to burn down. That is your Chekhov's gun. That is you the players and you are both aware. Blades of the Dark uses clocks for this.
Yeah.
And that helps because then the players can see the clocks on the table. No different than when you're using the tokens within Savage.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're either building or taking away.
Yeah.
Both give clear denotions of how the session, or how the scene is going and how it's feeling, and being prepared for that inevitable moment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Telegraphing that moment is the key.
And plus, like you said, it's kind of the Chekhov's gun. Like, being in a hostile environment like that, like, you expect hostilities. That is the Chekhov's gun of, like, okay, well, we're in a hostile environment. If hostility doesn't break out, like, characters like to feel like their preparation was rewarded.
Yeah.
So if you prepared for a bad thing and then the bad thing happened to test your preparedness, that feels good because it rewards your forethought. If you prepared for a bad thing and then nothing happens, you feel like you wasted your time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, what good is bringing an armed escort if nobody's going to attack you?
Exactly.
There is a little bit of a chicken and egg there, where, like, if the players think something's going to happen, maybe it should.
I agree with that, but I mean, in each system, I think either does or doesn't handle that very well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can get into the minutia of it, I'm sure, but
we can.
I'm just saying is that maybe peppering in a little bit of combat on top of some of your more boring scenes and stuff like that is okay from time to time.
Are you saying to put a little pepper on it?
Just put a little pepper on it.
A little pepper on it.
A little pepper on it.
Okay. We're back to the steak metaphor, or are we going to Letterkenny?
No, we're going to Letterkenny.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
yes,
that is essentially the PCs doing two things at the same time in a nutshell.
The first of the three.
Find a way for every character in that group to get involved in some way.
Yeah. Or listen for them willing to be involved and be prepared to say cool.
Right.
And add it in.
Right.
Make it work. I think that's the other aspect of that, is being prepared for your players to lean in and for you to go, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, oh, that's not going to work. Like, just don't do that.
No. One of the other ways of doing this is doing one thing while another thing is happening. And like I said, this is more, this is like AKA the fighting in a burning building trope. The goal may be singular, or it may be multifaceted.
Sure.
Like we previously described. But I'd say, as a storyteller, especially for a newer storyteller, try to be careful of doing too much. Because then you have way too much stuff to keep track of, and your players have too much stuff to keep track of. But the general gist is that the environment you're in is doing something different.
Yeah.
Okay? So, perhaps, like I said, the building's burning. You might be trying to research something before the entire library goes up in flames. This may be your one chance to learn the information. There's a larger fight going on. We talked a little bit in a much earlier episode about mass battles.
Yes.
And one of the conclusions we came to is that you should have regular-sized battles, but use the mass battle as the environmental effect.
And in D&D, like a layer action
like a layer
kind of
action,
thing.
Exactly. Stray bullets, explosions, arrows, siege weapons going off around you and stuff like that makes your small section of the battlefield unpredictable, but you don't have to worry about what thousands of troops are doing.
Yeah.
Thousands of troops are doing what thousands of troops do.
Right. They're holding something at bay. They're keeping other actions from going on.
This isn't their story. They're fighting all around you. This is still the hero's story. Keep it focused on the heroes.
Likewise, if you're doing like a naval battle where it's two ships attacking each other, you don't necessarily... And your goal is to get someone rescued off the other ship before it sinks.
Yeah.
You've got a lot going on there.
You've got that Admiral Norrington scene where he's like walking down
things are just exploding around him.
Things are exploding around him. Yeah, I mean, think of that. Like, how cool that would be as an environment, as essentially, like you said, layer actions. a panicked mob rioting all around you, things like that. A natural disaster like a volcanic eruptions or earthquakes, things like that. There's a million ways you can do this. There's a million very exciting environments that are very dynamic, are dangerous, are constantly changing, and that would utterly change a scene if it were being done rather than, in one of those environments rather than in, say, a calm, well-lit room.
One of the ones that came to mind when I was reading about this, since we started working the story, or the episode, was that the scene of Indiana Jones in the minecart, riding, while being chased by the other minecart through a terrible place, the mines, right? And there's all kinds of things happening while they're on this. Like, the minecart is its own environmental encounter.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think about that, but that is a really cool way of having an environmental encounter while a fight is going on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I can describe that entire scene in Savage Worlds rules for you.
Yep, and I love that kind of stuff.
Just like you can take a movie and describe 7th Sea rules to me.
Yep. It's true.
I can tell you everything that happens in that thing in Savage Rules.
Yeah. But it's those kinds of things that you can, if you start to visualize moments like that, you can quickly twist those moments to, okay, what would that scene feel like in a D&D chase, like a ride chase? Okay, maybe the environment is stormy, and you're riding through the woods, so it's dark. So they only get light every once in a while, and so you're dealing with branches, you're dealing with falling trees, you're dealing with animals crossing through as they're riding to try and chase something down.
Yeah.
So it's
every turn roll a d4, and on a 4, lightning flashes, so you don't use the darkness rolls this turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be neat. It could be a cool game, a little hide and seek.
Yeah, you now have a clear shot.
Exactly.
Kind of
you got the archer on standby, just waiting to put an arrow in something.
Yep, exactly.
Lightning flashes, bam, you hit it, and that can be cool.
And as long as everybody is understanding of what is going on and how that's being affected, it can be really cool. It can add a lot to it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you step into this one because I think you kind of want to I think we need to redeem a little bit of D&D.
I want everybody to just take a moment, take a deep breath, center themselves, sit down for a second because I'm about to say something very nice about D&D. And I know in recent episodes I've not been known for that.
No, we talk down to it a little too often.
I do. I admittedly I'm going through a bad breakup phase with it right now, so I'm going to say something very nice about D&D. Layer actions are great. I love layer actions so much. They're one of the best things in D&D combat. They add an atmosphere to otherwise boring static combat. They're cinematic
very much so.
And they're a really great template on how to do these sorts of encounters and make your environments actually matter. You know, I think just looking at them in the rules and being like, this is what this monster's layer actions are like, immediately gives you a very clear idea of what that layer is and how that layer, can act.
Yeah. And I'll say this. The one thing that you want to keep in mind with this, and it is in the rules, but it is not as explicit for the storytelling aspect, is as a storyteller, you know the layer actions. It is not upon you to surprise your players with the layer actions.
Sure.
They're in the environment. Telegraph it with narration before the event occurs. Like, if the dragon is going to belch out fire, that is part of the layer action event that they can do, because when they breathe out their fire, it maybe lights part of the ground up with it and therefore extends out his fire in a different way. Have it notable that the rocks are burning slightly.
We've talked about it a little bit. You and I have been playing a lot of Monster Hunter World lately.
We have been.
And so where I'm thinking, and anybody else who also plays that game, down over by where Lavasioth is, there are it's all lava. You'd imagine a monster named Lavasioth is. But there are little cracks in the earth there that sputter with lava a little bit. And when you look at them, you immediately know, like, maybe I shouldn't stand near that thing. And sure enough, occasionally a will just geyser lava out.
And it'll crack and, like, rock the terrain, and you'll be in lava a little bit if you're not careful.
But you can also, like, kite the monster into it and hurt them with it and
Depending
stuff.
Depending on the monster.
Sometimes
they'll just love it.
but the fact that it's there, it's a known environmental thing. You know, like you said, your PCs are there. You shouldn't be like, oh, yeah, suddenly there's lava geysers. You guys didn't see that come. Well, no, we kind of did, you know. The room is hot. There's lava seeping out of little cracks everywhere.
Yeah.
We can feel the tremors.
But the thing is that in a story where literally there's no visuals, maybe you don't even have a really good map to show things off, it behooves you to bring them into the moment.
Exactly.
By telegraphing a lot.
Yes.
And that's really the key, is telegraphing and storytelling how things are being presented so that they feel those moments as they come upon them.
Sure. And I think that kind of leads into, like, the other really big aspects that I love these sort of things for, is, you know, kind of like we were saying, you know, that lava crack in Lavasioth's area, it can hurt other monsters, you know? It adds a tactical element of, like, what if, instead of this turn, instead of just rolling my 2 attacks and whacking it with my sword again, which, yawn, what if I taunt it?
Right.
And get it to run over here and, you know, try to keep it here so that next turn, when that lava geyser goes off, you know, I'm thinking Wesley with the ROUSs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rolls it right into the fire.
Yeah, he hears the sputtering and he's like, oh, okay, I know what's going on. Rolls the thing right over in the fire and kills it. How cool is that?
It's perfect.
He could have stabbed it with his sword, but that was so much better. And I submit to you that if that were an RP game, he'd feel awesome as a player. He'd be telling that story for years.
And let's be honest, by doing so, as a storyteller, you're accepting that is going to do something cool. And you're going to lean into that cool factor.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be like, it only did 1d6 to him, he's still alive. Oh, come on.
No, man, come on. He did something cool. Let him have it.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
held him over the fire, literally.
Yes.
You know. Let's see how that goes.
But also, there's the tactical, there's the grander strategic aspect of, if this is what a monster's lair does, do we want to really fight it in there?
Right.
Or can we lure it out somehow? Can we choose the battleground rather than meeting it on its home turf?
Yeah, and this is, I think, where, like, a battlefield situation where you don't just immediately throw them into the fight. You have the battlefield feeling, and then you ramp up the encounter to meet that point. So, like, maybe they're sneaking across, and the events are happening, and they hear the whistling of the rounds coming in so that they know they need to take cover in something, only to have the explosions go off so that when they're in combat and you're like, okay, you guys hear whistles, you're like, oh crap, we're going to get hit in the next 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Crap. Okay, you know, maybe not this turn, but next turn rounds are going to hit the ground. Okay, mortars are hitting.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like we either need to not be here or we need to scatter.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a thing, because we don't know where they're going to hit. You know,
and you can do things dynamically with this too. You know, imagine for anybody who's watched and or played, because the scene played out the exact same in the game, The Last of Us. I'll try to be as spoiler free about this as possible because I know the show is relatively fresh. But one of the main characters ends up in a situation where they are one-on-one versus someone who means them harm, and this character, as means of distraction, actually throws a burning log from a fire at them.
Okay.
And it kind of rolls past them, lands up against a curtain, and lights the curtain on fire.
Starting the room.
And suddenly the entire wooden building is starting to go up. And you have this tense scene that's kind of a little bit of stealth and then turns into action when they finally discover one another, where there's a quick but brutal fight that breaks out inside this burning building. You know, so you can do that where, like, at the beginning of an encounter, everything's fine, but then something happens, and, like, now the room is on fire.
Yeah.
And now that fire is escalating, and, like, every turn that goes by, like you said, you've got a clock. Only this clock now has, you know, escalating effects for every tick on it.
Yeah. And keep in mind that escalating ticks can mean a lot of different things in different settings. In fantasy, fire usually is hard to stop unless you've got a caster who's trying to control it, you know, who has that ability. But that doesn't mean it's not going to ramp up other problems. Like, the building's been on fire. Now it's not so strong.
Right.
You know?
And even if it is just the wizard using control fire to put it out or something like that, that's still removing the wizard from the table for a turn or 2 or 3,
right.
depending on how out of control it's gotten. You know,
right.
So that's turns he's not throwing disintegrate. That's turns he's not throwing fireball himself. That's turns he's not, whatever he's doing.
Right.
So that still represents an escalation in things, and it still puts choices on the table. Do I want to just do my wizard thing in Blaster Cast or whatever, or do I want to try to get this thing under control?
Right.
So you've got different types of ways of doing this. Like the 2 main ones that I could think of were the D&D lair actions.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed those. The main thing with those, though, is they're typically targeted against the PCs.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are an extension of the monster in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a red dragon has its own lair actions, and those are all, like, it's never going to hit the red dragon,
Right.
I would encourage you to come up with lair actions more often, but make them less targeted.
Yeah.
And then, it's choose basically from a menu of effects, and you can't repeat that effect the same one 2 turns in a row. Yeah. Savage Worlds has an interesting one. It's Complications.
Yes.
Where if your action card... so Savage Worlds uses a deck of playing cards for their initiative order. If your action card comes up as a club, you suffer a complication on your turn. And depending on what type of encounter you're doing there, that could mean multiple different things. If it's a chase encounter, you might have a terrain complication where, like, crashing through the proverbial cabbage cart.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, or it could be, like in a social situation, you might get, perform a social faux pas or something like that if you fail your thing. But there's other times you can do this, just like as far as, like I said, lair actions go. Okay, you're fighting in a burning building. If your action card comes up as a club, you get in some way affected by the fire.
Something falls on you.
Something falls on you.
Embers catch on your cloak or your clothes.
Yeah, exactly. You get a little bit too close to open flame, and you take a little bit of damage.
Something separates you from the person you're fighting.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we would encourage you to come up with like a menu of things. Maybe maybe come up with 8 of them and roll a d8.
Yeah.
Just to throw a little randomness, a little chaos into the scene.
Yeah. And at the same time, and this is just me, I would also say you could alter the way that criticals work. For instance, if somebody crits on somebody, maybe the damage isn't the crit. Maybe they are able to they get an opportunity of some kind out of it. Someone gets knocked into the fire, or or into somebody else, which causes a delay, or something falls on them, or you're using where it's something more about the layer assisting that those layer actions also, or those environmental effects affecting the situation in their favor. It's something miraculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth noting that in this situation, your foes also have the chance of flipping clubs.
Right.
Burning beams can land on them as well.
And that's where I feel like if you don't have the clubs, and it's D&D, let your crits do that. Let your critical failures do that. So that it's not just normal combat, it changes the effective scene. It's, do they get an opportunity, or is it a consequence?
Sure. Or something, like a Devil's Bargain in Blades in the Dark.
Right, like, okay, well, you're able to get what you need to, but unfortunately, you're also going to take a hit.
Yeah. And the thing that I really like about the Savage Worlds version of this, though, is that what I found when I have employed this is that my players will spend bennies to avoid getting clubs. You'll recycle your action cards using your bennies, which keeps that benny economy going.
It does. It really does.
And it gives me more incentive to give out bennies because you are spending them in return. So that feels good.
And Blades leans into this heavily because it presents the goal and consequences right up front. It's like, you're in a bad situation. If this gets worse, if you don't succeed at this roll, you're now going to be in a complicated situation that's just not going to work out for you. So anything is going to turn out bad.
Yeah,
absolutely. Even if you achieve, you're still going to end up with some kind of consequence. So in that sense, you're already preparing yourself as a storyteller to be like, okay, what kind of consequences would this have? But that's built into the story, and 9 times out of 10, your players are right there with you on those consequences.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah.
Like, even asking, like, okay, so this just happened. We need a consequence. Oh, the person fell on me. Like, it got knocked over, or, I'm out of the scene. Oh, great, perfect. Those types of things. 7th Sea leans into that as well. When you enter a scene, you know what number of successes you need, but you also know what successes you need to spend to avoid consequences or get to opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just not do the goal and avoid the consequences, or you can avoid the consequences and take the role, or just get the opportunity. Because maybe the opportunity is worth more to you than the other pieces.
Yeah, sure.
So each system does it a little differently, and I kind of encourage looking around at them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can really find some different ways of looking at your scenes.
Yeah.
Than a mechanical, digital, video game methodology.
Mm-hmm.
To get around that. So let's close this up with, why is this interesting?
So your encounters of all types don't always happen in ideal circumstances all the time. Your hacking roll might be fun, but it's a lot more fun when Godzilla's attacking.
That's true. That is true.
I'm going to say this definitely injects a chaotic element into ordinary circumstances, and so it can add a lot of randomness, but at the same time, it offers another obstacle that your PCs can interact with, possibly rewarding their ingenuity.
Yeah, especially in PCs who may not be directly involved, but they're still there, and the things are still going on. PCs
have always surprised me. No matter what game we're playing, no matter how long I play, it is always surprising to me when I build an environment and I put what I believe are innocuous details in there, and players are like, I'm going to use it like this. And you're like, oh, wow, when I put this together, I never imagined anyone would do that. And that's the first thing out of your mouth. The last combat in the warehouse, you shield charged into one of the racks to
knock it
over, and distracted one of the enemies so that our fighter could lay into it with his greatsword. And it worked miraculously.
Yep.
But that was just an environmental detail. I'm like, you're in a warehouse. There's shelving units.
Sure.
Cool. They can fall.
Yep.
I've seen that video.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, definitely want to reward players for their ingenuity in using the environment around them, and I think that's great.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. So the third one is all the PCs doing their own thing towards a common goal.
Right.
And this is, we'll call the ship combat is the easiest way to say it. You've got your engineering station, you got your captain station, you got your comms, your piloting. Each person has their thing. In 7th Sea, everyone has a role on the boat, and they roll for that role.
Yeah, it's pretty common for like ship to ship combat to be built like this. And I got to admit, when I was throwing this list together, I hadn't actually initially even thought about this as a multifaceted encounter, and it absolutely is. Nevim, who always provides such great questions for us, actually asked this question directly, and so the question is, in TTRPG Coriolis by Free League Games, the space combat system has been designed to have different crew positions to take part of the action. You have the pilot, the captain, the gunner. Each player is supposed to take one crew position, and thus giving actions and opportunities in the space combat. Is the system designed as a multifaceted encounter? And until I read that question, I hadn't really even thought about this. The answer is yes. But so great question, Nevin. Thank you so much for submitting that and jogging this whole section of the discussion here. I have a problem with ship combat.
Would you like the box? I can put the box down so you can get started.
Do you want me to just get up on the box and just get this out of the way?
I would say just get this out of the way, because I do want to do the Otra to this at the end. So.
Sure.
But please stand up on your box.
So I happened to read a Reddit thread a while ago, and I really wish I could find it so that I could give a shout out to this person who wrote this wonderful little dissertation on why ship to ship combat sucks in every game system. And I was like, okay, that's a broad, thesis statement that ship to ship combat sucks always. Let's read. Let's see what you got to say here. And basically, the idea is that Okay, so everyone is divided into their own unique, very narrow role in ship-to-ship combat, right? Okay, so in Coriolis here, we've got the captain, we've got the engineer, the pilot, etc. Okay, so looking directly at those rules, the captain can issue one of 4 different orders that gives a bonus to a specific action for other crew on that turn. That's it. Literally pick one of these 4 buttons to push. There's no roll. There's no dramatic resolution to it. It's just, oh, you can say repair, and we get a +1 to repair rolls this turn. You can say fight, and we get a +1 to our shooting this turn. That's it. That's the entire interaction with the captain. The captain of the ship. Okay. Then it goes to the engineer. And the engineer has to move around little power points, basically, and make sure that whatever we're trying to do has enough power allocated to it. Now, I can see this being maybe a little dramatic when, the ship gets a little bit beaten up, and you've got those moments like you do on Star Trek where it's like, reactors at 50%, and, we need all power to the shields so that we can get out of here. Screw the phasers, we're not shooting anymore,
Right.
Okay, I get that. But essentially all you're doing is saying, that gets points and that gets points.
It's a decision-making tree.
Yeah. And then nothing, you know? Pilot makes a piloting roll to basically see if the ship moves closer to or away from the enemy. That's it. You've essentially got like a grid that you're moving like forward or backwards on to close distance if you're chasing or build distance if you're running.
Yeah.
And again, that's it. And so what this does is this leaves very little choice for interesting gameplay. You push your assigned button, and then it's on to the next turn. There's no interesting story being told here. I mean, just like everything else, you can role-play during it. But the actual interaction at hand here is very minimal. Your choices are very minimal. And you've just basically split up what should be one task into 5 separate individual little tasks so that everybody can feel like they're involved in the situation.
Yep.
Now, that's it on the surface.
So, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna step in here for just a minute and do my portion of handling this a little differently, and I'm gonna not argumentatively say this, but that is in essence most combat in mechanical terms in D&D. I am the fighter. What do? I walk over to it and push my one button, fight. What do? I'm the cleric. I get a choice. Either I heal, or I do the other thing that I can do, which might be fight or not. I am the mage. I shoot the thing. I fight. I have my fight button, right?
Okay.
So, and it's somebody else's turn. And then it's somebody else's turn.
I think you're wrong, but continue.
But I feel that there is a similarity in the way that is envisioned, that some people enjoy that. Some people enjoy the board game aspect, in the mini board game inside of your role-playing system, so that everyone can feel involved. Because people who may not role-play, who may not be at the same level of creativity, may find that right there, that moment of downtime when they're effectively making it easier to play, they get to play an aspect of something that is kind of cool for them to do, and then they can role-play it up. The mechanics are easy, the role-play suddenly goes through the roof because it's easy, because it's simplified.
I get what you're saying, but I think that, especially from the standpoint of like comparing it to regular combat,
Right.
I don't think... I think if your combat's boiled down to I press my attack button, I press my fireball button, I press my heal button, then man, you really need to work on imagining better systems and better, sure, you're rolling your eyes at me.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not trying to argue with the fact of...
I just got done describing how I told you were fighting in a warehouse, and the first thing you did was slam into a environmental... You created an environmental hazard. That it's that sort of ingenuity that you have available to you, especially if you have a storyteller that rewards that ingenuity. Okay,
I agree.
And so, but that option isn't on the menu in Coriolis' ship combat.
And that's what I'm saying, is that the mechanics are what's hindering you in doing that. And in some cases, players need that tight mechanic to enjoy.
Yeah, Heatsink's got my back in the live chat. He says, point is the same. It's the same regardless of how you dress it up.
I'm with you. I think my point.
Oh wait, I think he's trying to agree. His point. I think he's trying to agree with you.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that it's what I'm trying to get at is that I'm not saying that there's a negative to playing Coriolis. I think that there is some people who would truly enjoy that because it is boxed in mechanics that are simplified and easy and allow them to role play with their own flexibility beyond that. In a narrative sense.
I see what you're saying. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that you're wrong.
No. We have this table for a reason.
Different people are going to have fun in different ways.
Correct.
Coriolis' rules are not objectively bad. They're not objectively bad. I don't like them.
Correct.
Because of the aforestated things.
Yeah.
Now, I will continue with my point.
And I'm going to, because the last thing I'm going to say is our show is about storytelling, and that's what we're focusing on.
Right, we are not Board Game Conclave.
Correct.
Yes,
Thank you so much. So
yes.
Allow me to let you continue.
Okay, so the other half of this is conceptualizing what ship combat means in the term of the narrative. Okay. And that is basically that in media, most of the time, ship combat isn't about the combat. It's almost always about the individuals on the ship while it's in combat. Okay? We used Firefly as an example earlier. Okay?
We talked about it,
Firefly usually is the go-to archetype that a lot of people, because it's a very ubiquitous media, especially in nerd culture, where you can describe what the functions of a small crew on a ship should look like. Okay, so typically you've got these rules like in Coriolis where it's like, oh well, everybody goes to a station and everybody does their little job to make the ship all work. You almost never see that though, because the characters are typically not crew members on a ship. They're passengers on a ship, or they're there to do something entirely different that isn't engineering or piloting or whatever.
Or they're a specific part of a larger crew.
Right. So, again, I will describe Firefly because it's something I think a lot of people know. And it's a go-to thing for like, oh, well, what if it's a small crew? Everybody has to do their part, right? Okay. Let's look at Firefly. You've got Wash, who's the pilot. You've got Mal, who's the captain. You've got Kaylee, who is the engineer. That's it. Those are the only people directly interacting with the Serenity. Everybody else is a passenger on that ship. Now, mind you, the Serenity doesn't have guns, so there's not really combat necessarily. But, I mean, there are times when the ship gets in trouble and they need to operate the ship as a team. Sure. But even Zoe, who is, part of the quote-unquote crew, is not doing anything. She's just first mate. She's basically just there to back Mal up on things. You've got their gun bunny. Why can I not think of his name? Jane, thank you. You've got their gun bunny, Jane. Ordinarily, like, that's, oh, well, you're the warrior dude, so you're going to man the ship's guns. Well, it doesn't have guns. So, essentially, yeah, even their fighter is sitting around hoping things go well.
Weld a 40mm cannon to it in the final act, and even then it was brief, very very brief.
Very brief, yeah. But then aside from that, you've got Book, you've got Simon, you've got River. Am I missing anybody?
Inara.
Oh, Inara. Yeah. So you've the 5 of them, 6 if you include Zoe, are literally just sitting around hoping things go well.
Strapped in.
Right.
Yeah.
So the story is not about them, everybody pitching in and manning the crew and blah, blah, blah. It's about what are we doing? What is the drama behind the scene? Why are we in combat right now?
And another one, even if you want to go to something that is way more gritty, The Expanse, right? most of those people are just strapped in hoping not to die.
Yeah.
In most of their scenes.
You have crew on these ships that are NPCs that are doing these things for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, here's some thoughts that I've got about this. Focus on what is going on with these individuals while it's in combat, okay? It's usually a ship combat scene is going to be better run, in my opinion, as PCs doing one thing while another thing is happening.
Yeah.
Your environmental effect is the ship is blowing up around you.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Maybe you are the pilot and the captain of that ship. That's fine. That's 2 of you, of the 5 people at my table.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are going to worry about, negotiating with the other ship that's firing upon you, and when that fails, you're going to get the heck out of here. Cool. What are the other 3 of you doing?
How many times in Star Trek has the captain or someone gone down to engineering and the entire view goes to engineering?
Exactly. What is happening on the bridge? Who cares what's happening on the bridge? The story isn't there.
Right.
You
right.
know?
The Klingons are still firing.
Exactly.
That's the key,
So that the ship being under fire, maneuvering, being boarded, etc., is the hostile environment that the other important story tasks are taking place during.
Yeah.
Okay. Some more thoughts. As a PC, because I've been in this position before in your 7th Sea game.
Yep.
I made my character to be a teleporting gunslinger, not a cannoneer. I'd like to be teleporting or gunslinging, preferably both at the same time.
Yes.
Not making a single shooting roll to see how many HP I can knock off of the enemy Galleon.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. No, it's a very valid point.
Mm-hmm.
Matt in the iconic sea combat scene where his players were not doing things with the boat. They were going to screw up the other boat using their magic.
We made the sea do a somersault underneath the enemy boat, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, and now it is scuttled against the rocks, and your entire combat sequence that you were going to go through is scrapped. Great. But at the same time, great. Like, the players are being themselves.
Yeah, they used their abilities. They took charge of a situation. They used their own ingenuity. Yeah, reward it. And the story moves on. Like, it's not important. And then lastly, I would say, like, if you want to play the part of the captain, that's fine. Make the tough calls on the bridge. That's great. I think that's a great dramatic moment to be in as a captain. Okay? The big drama of being the captain is making those tough calls. Maybe you'll need to send a man to his death, blah, 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 right?
Right.
Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Each turn, everyone else on the ship, regardless of what they're doing, because we are under fire and parts of the ship are being blown up, is going to suffer some sort of complication or consequence. Your command, battle, whatever skill the current system offers you to be the captain will result in removing some of the consequences for them. You choose. Are you going to triage the warp core explosion that's about to happen in engineering, but maybe some of the crew quarters are being vented? Or are you going to assign, triage to the crew quarters to try to save the innocent people, but maybe engineering is going to have to white-knuckle it with a roll of duct tape and some super glue for a turn or two, Why is this better for me than choosing one of 4 bonuses to give off of a menu? The drama behind command is coming in having other lives in your hands and having to make those tough calls, okay? By removing some but not all of the negative consequences from other PCs, you get to triage the negative consequences of combat and put that into practice.
Yes.
If you can remove all of them, it's not a tough call.
No.
Neither is the captain consigned to this role, like you said.
Yeah.
I can head down to engineering at any time and start helping them out. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like I
can do more down in engineering than I can do up here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I do have a repair skill. Like, maybe they need all hands on deck down there,
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
That's where the story's going to be then, And it's just so much more free-form and personal than just, oh, you guys get a +1 to shooting. When I was reading over this, I kept thinking back to Vicky playing her bard in 3rd edition D&D.
Okay.
And how her contribution to the combat was +1.
Yeah.
And how we turned that into a meme in our group because it was so boring and so mundane. +1. That's me. I played a bard. I get to say +1.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I'm playing music. +1.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. It makes it, again, board gamey with some flavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is sad.
So I would say consider repelling borders.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of running like as a combat or something like that, run that as PCs doing two things at once. Borders don't have to be a full combat encounter. Okay. Think about trying to fix hull breaches while being shot at.
Yeah.
I mean, we've played a little bit of Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
You know what that's like.
I do. I think the other aspect of it is also like the Star Trek aspect where it's like someone else gets put in charge. Like, don't let them, do what you need to handle the situation. And suddenly the combat becomes a social encounter for that new captain. Like, I'm thinking the Sulu moment of like, I have 16 high definition warheads pointed at you. Don't test me.
Yeah.
I love that seed, but at the same time, it's a bluff that everybody is just like, he rolled really well. Don't remind me never to play poker with you.
Right.
But at the same time, that it changes the scene because while that's going on, someone else is sneaking out of the ship to go do something else.
Yeah.
That continues the moment.
Oh, that Firefly moment. You all go back inside and enjoy your drinks, or I will blow a new crater in this crappy little moon. They think that a Serenity or a Firefly class ship has guns on it.
But that's the thing, is that you can do things like that.
Yeah.
You can change up the whole moment and give your PCs that edge.
Yes.
Or at the same time, make it very fearful that bad things are happening and you've got to make some tough decisions to get out of there.
Yeah, exactly.
If we can go just a little bit longer, can you guys work a little faster? We have this evasion clock.
Right. Hold them off just one more turn. I almost have the hyperdrive back online, and then we are out of here.
Yeah. We'll get one jump, but that's it.
Right. But it'll put us out of range of their guns, and that's all we need right now,
Exactly.
Cool. You live to tell another day. You had a tense moment. Wham.
Yep. Exactly. All right. We've talked a lot.
Yes, we have.
But we still have questions.
Yeah.
We still have questions. Nevim had some really good questions, and I liked that. Where do you want to go? Because I know you threw some of these in here.
I think we've kind of answered the first one. What tips can you give to upgrade an encounter to a multifaceted encounter? A lot of it is just looking at what else is going on in the environment and what could be happening in the environment.
And also, it doesn't... Being prepared to gauge your thing back from a combat to an encounter that's multifaceted.
Right.
Because it doesn't have to be combat to still be a good encounter and a challenge. Always remember that.
Yes.
If it doesn't have to be.
Yes.
Now, again, if your game is combat leaning, here's how to spice up your combat. How to...
Yeah, combat's probably the easiest one to fight because, it's probably the most common activity in a lot of games, especially Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So it's just a very common example, but yeah, by all means, does not need to be combat.
Okay. Next one.
In tabletop RPG Tales from the Loop,
okay,
there is a notion of extended trouble.
Ooh.
Where the characters are facing some great trouble or huge situation. The players are asked to design a plan. Each player will make one roll to resolve the issue. Each player chooses the type of roll depending on how the character takes part in the overall plan. Once all rolls are made, the outcome is described. As before, this system designed as a multifaceted encounter?
100% sounds like a dramatic task to me.
Yeah, sounds exactly like a dramatic task or a skill challenge in 4th edition D&D. Yeah, absolutely. And I think both of those systems are great, and I highly encourage their use. Skill challenges were one of the best things to come out of D&D. Dramatic tasks, I think, are one of my go-to tools for resolution in Savage Worlds.
Yeah, I think Blades in the Dark simplifies this, but it would still weigh in the same direction for party tasks.
Yeah. I think the big important takeaway from tasks like this, and this is the reason I love them so much, is because it allows different types of characters to play to their strengths and choose the best way in which they can help. Okay, so if you've got a research-based character, a bookworm, basically, they can lend, information gathering, but if you've got somebody who barely knows how to read, but, can pick things up and put things down, Well, then, maybe they can put their back into something. Maybe they can move something or build something or fight something, know. And all of these things working in concert gets the job done. But it leaves it up to the players to pick from their strengths and work together to do it. And everybody gets to share their own individual limelight that way.
Yes.
Rather than it being like, oh, this is a combat encounter, but I'm the bookworm, so I guess I'm just going to sit this one out.
And it does allow for some player metagaming with each other where you can help each other lean into narrative aspects of each other.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Like, dude, I don't know what I can do here. And somebody else is like, dude, you have that huge lore skill. Like, you could literally be telling us about how to solve this in this other way. And that helps those players start envisioning their character under a different light.
And if you're playing in a system, like I can't speak to a lot of other systems, but I know that Savage Worlds does this really well. Your character in my game, you've actually built a lot of his edges to make him the most efficient helper. So a lot of times it isn't what you're doing; it's who you can help to give giant bonuses to do their job.
Correct.
And situations like that where your character really shines, where it's like, okay, guys, we all got to work in concert today. Okay, great. That's where I shine the best.
Yep.
Let's do something as a team.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where this next question: do you have any examples of games that are putting multifaceted encounters in their design? And I think to a degree, I mean, Savage World definitely does. We talk about it all the time. The dramatic tasks, aiding is an action within it that is literally designed to keep players involved with each other, regardless of what their base abilities are.
Sure. Even in combat, a lot of your like non-combat skills, like persuasion and stuff, that can be used in a combative way to taunt enemies and throw them off their guard and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the age-old, like, while the fighter is fighting in the bar, the damsel can hit someone over the head with a bottle.
Sure, and it may not do damage, but it distracts them, and that's when the fighter clocks them.
Correct. Is that my light?
Your light is
having
a little light switch wave over there.
I got a little light switch wave. I just thought it was just me getting twitchy.
Nope.
Blades in the Dark, again, shines in this way because you can do a lot more discussion even before dice hits the table to decide how you want to handle that encounter as a group. Whether it's a group action, whether it's aiding within it, all of that sits within the same pace, and it's not the age-old D&D where someone says, I'm going to do this thing, while everybody else is still planning, like, well, that's now what we're doing, because you just don't want to plan. It changes the way that scenes can be described and moved through, and how consequences can be mitigated and or added to get the results that you want to get at the end.
Yeah.
And I love that. In that aspect, you are group storytelling at that point, not just rolling dice and then saying what happened after the fact.
Right.
And I think, that's where that telegraphing comes in with, like, 7th Sea, is that it's presenting that situation to the group, and then the group decides what consequences they're going to be willing to accept, how they're going to spend their roles, things like that, to be able to get the narrative that they want out of it and the story to continue.
Sure.
And
I do want to, drop D&D, of course, back into this mention here, that, I think, like I said earlier, their lair actions are phenomenal examples of multifaceted encounters because, having to deal with that sort of stuff while a combat encounter is going on is great. I've also seen, though I don't know that it's necessarily put forward in their actual design, I have not played a lot of like book encounters or storylines or whatever modules,
pre-generated adventures.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of those. But I've seen, like, on Critical Role, Matt Mercer has done a couple where like they're fighting a thing that is contained in a glass case, like a brain in a jar sort of thing. And they had to go around and dispel like 3 different runes while this thing was summoning in monsters and lashing out with tentacles and stuff like that to open the containment so that they could kill the brain in the jar inside.
Nice.
And so it kind of created one of those scenes where it was like, okay, we're doing research rolls under fire, we're only this time it was arcane rolls,
right,
to unlock this rune sequence. There was only a couple people in the group that could do it, and they were the big hitters too. It was Caleb and Bo. It was in their second season. Okay. So the monk and the blaster caster wizard were essentially taken out because they were both trying to work these runes because it was a really high difficulty, and they were the only ones with the arcane skill to do it.
Yep.
So yeah, you've got choices to make there.
Yep.
You design your encounters like that, it starts getting pretty fun.
Yep. So before we close out,
yeah,
I want to talk about the next week's topic for those of you who are listening tonight and those who are going to be on the podcast. Next week is our anniversary.
Oh yeah. It's been
the 9th is our 4-year anniversary. We started in 2019 on Thursday, May 9th.
We thought it was our 3rd year anniversary, and then we did the math, and we're like, "There's 52 years in a week,
or 52 weeks in a year,
or 52 weeks in a year," and we've done over 200 episodes. Oh crap!
Yeah, we just hit that number. So, we're gonna throw out some thanks, but I really appreciate everybody being here for the ride. It's been really cool. Last month our numbers were pretty incredible. And it was surprising.
It was our biggest month, yeah.
Yeah. But we've had a nice gain really for the last year. It's been pretty incredible. And
we've seen a lot of new faces on the Discord.
And I love that. Oh my god, I love that.
We've had some new some new guests.
Yeah.
Talking to us. We've had some people reach out to us. We had our first sponsorship.
Yeah. I mean, and we love doing this.
Yeah.
We want more people in the Discord. I'm always trying to get people on Reddit to jump in and join the Discord, regardless of the level of storyteller they are. I love seeing new storytellers who are just about to get into D&D or just about to get into another game, and they need help, and they want help, but they don't want to ask the players, and they're not sure about it. I love when they jump on, and they start asking questions. Mm-hmm. It's some of the best times for me, because it's I think it comes down to, like, when we were coming up with more episodes this year, because we needed another 19 shows.
Yeah.
Like, we do this to ourselves. We're like, dude, we got to get more shows out. We need to figure out. So we'll sit down and brain bash it. But Vicky joined us on this last one, and you had made a really cool way of saying why it was important to have Vicky there. And it was something to the effect of, like, we have this brain tranquility about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And we need someone to throw a rock in the pond so that we can see what's really going on.
Yeah.
And just to mess us up a little bit, to not think in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
We lose the horse blinders briefly.
Yeah.
Just so that we can look around and be like, oh yeah, that's right, totally forgot about that thing. Mm-hmm. Just for a second. And I think new storytellers really help with that.
Yeah.
I think people who come in from different systems really help with that.
I love it when somebody comes into our Discord and is like, hey, I'm a huge player of, like, this game. And I think that's actually, like, where our next system spot, like, our next week's show, Cortex, comes up. I think it was somebody, I forgot who it was, came in and was like, guys, I'm a huge Cortex player. Have you reviewed this yet? And we're like, no, we haven't.
Cortex.
As we're quietly putting it on the list. Yeah, no, never heard of it.
Maybe we'll think about that.
Right.
But it's things like that help us, listen to the community, that help us remember that there are still new people out there who need to hear new stuff, who need to start at the basics and help them. And, I don't always want to say, like, hey, go back and listen to our first episodes. Mm-hmm. Because, like, that's not the answer all the time.
Yeah.
And in many times it's, hey, go listen to this 101 episode and this other episode. But at the same time, like, ask your questions.
Yeah,
we'd
absolutely
love to answer them. It helps.
Everybody's table is unique.
Yeah.
And it's great to not only, jog our own, things, but, like, also get other storytellers jumping in. Dude. Half the time, I don't answer questions on purpose because I want to give other storytellers a chance.
So much so
to go and stretch, and some great answers have come out.
And I love
our community
hearing about other people's games.
Yeah, absolutely.
God, I love hearing about other people's games. Because you get exceptionally creative things, mm-hmm. and very simple things that are like, hey, I've got this magic item. Can you guys give me some ideas of like, is this right? Is this good? Because here's this expansive game, and I'm throwing this magic item in. And mm-hmm. I just need to talk about this. Sure, great. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Whatever. And, like, a lot of people are still talking about D&D. We don't care. We'll answer D&D. We'll as a group, we'll love it.
Yeah.
At the same time, someone's just like, hey, I'm looking to do this. Sounds like you might want to do Blades in the Dark or Morkborg or any number of other things. And I absolutely love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So thank you, everyone. And please, if you're thinking about joining our Discord, please come. Come join our Discord. We would love, love, love to have you and to talk with you and hear what you're doing. it would mean a lot to us. So,
that said, next week's Systems Spotlight, second Wednesday of the month. So y'all get to learn a new system along with us. We are talking about Cortex. It's an award-winning tabletop role-playing game that has existed in one form or another for over 20 years. I had no idea.
It's been around. Like, when I started looking up, I was like, what the heck do I say for the history on this one? Because there's quite an interesting history on Cortex. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to dig into it. So,
but Cortex Prime is the newest version, and refined and redesigned for a new digitally supported generation. So, we are going to be discussing the ins and outs of that, and you guys are going to be learning it right alongside of us. So, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And like we said, join us on Discord. We'd love to have you there. Join the community, discuss things with the other storytellers up there, and shoot us some questions. We'll answer them live here on the air. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help and support us every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Subjet, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion, Vedran, Hulavu, and Sean. We really appreciate all of your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems or on Instagram. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thanks so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat beside our tables over these years to give us great stories to share with you and you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you.
Good night.
Good night.